I never imagined that I would be able to heal from patterns of ancestral emotional pain that were at the root cause of an addiction to alcohol, of broken relationships with my mom, with my husband, with myself, of always feeling anxious and suffering with moments of depression. In fact, I didn't even know what ancestral karma was. But fast forward to today, I can pinpoint the game changing process, those moments in time and space, the techniques and tools that allowed me to finally discover I was running on ancestral patterns that my ancestors could not heal and finally disrupt them, healing myself, body, mind, and spirit, and healing 7 generations before and after me. And in today's Sovereign Women Movement podcast episode, I'm going to share with you the how, the game-changing process that allowed me to reclaim my sovereignty and to go beyond the pattern. Sat Nam, a beautiful, beautiful sovereign woman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's live and today's Sovereign Women Movement podcast. Today, I really want to just take some time to share with you the game-changing process, that pivotal moment in time and space where I understood not only what ancestral karma was, but also how I came up with the technique, the process, the method known as the AVI method to disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns from my life. I was able to get to the root cause of these addictions and all these toxicities as it relates to relationships, and especially relationship with myself, because ultimately that's where we have to do the most work in. And truly, it wasn't until I understood what happened and I was able to put the puzzle pieces together, looking back, that I saw how simple yet how difficult we can make this journey to be. So today I'm going to share with you the breakdown of how that actually worked so that we can all understand and have a better grasp of how this actually works. So first and foremost, like I said, I didn't even know what ancestral karmic patterns were. Back in 2015, I went to the Amazon jungle to work with plant medicines for 17 days. I spent 17 days with my family. I actually took my husband, my 2 sons to the Amazon jungle, knowing that we would be entering into what I call now the operation of our soul. During that time, I had already been going through so much emotional pain. I had for a long time, wanted to heal from an addiction of alcohol. For a long time, I just wanted to find solutions for my anxiety, for the depression, for all of the past that for a long time I was running away from. And when my young son, he was only in high school, I remember that he did a presentation in his high school for psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. He is an incredibly old soul. He's 25 now. And he shared this knowledge with his school, and his teacher fully supported him in helping others understand how indigenous people used plant medicine to heal spiritually, to heal physically, and to heal the mind. And when he shared this project with his high school, I found out about Mother Ayahuasca. I found out about San Pedro. I found out about all these plant medicines that I never even knew about. So when he told me about it, it was almost like God made everything happen so that I would align to go to the Peruvian jungle for 17 days and to work with these plant medicines to actually assist me. It was something that I knew that was very scary to me, because thinking of traveling to another country and knowing that plant medicines, you go in states of consciousness where you don't necessarily control your physical aspects or mental aspects, you don't control what's happening, freaked me out, as well as knowing that my family was going to come with me. But the drive and the feeling of wanting to overcome and heal from these instabilities was bigger, because for a long time I had been on my spiritual journey. I believe my first spiritual awakening happened back in 2008, actually. That's when I began my spiritual journey, when through that time we were super young and there was a real estate market collapse. I was a real estate broker, owned my own company at that time, very young, but my husband and I were at the top of the game. The market collapses. That in itself drove us into a spiritual path of awakening, both of us. But it wasn't until 2015 that we actually began the healing journey. And so when I found out about Mother Ayahuasca, it was almost like I knew that that was exactly where I needed to go. And like I said, God made it possible for us to travel there for 17 days to work with these plant medicines and to work with very sacred shaman, basically doctors who were able to assist us in our journey. But a lot of people think that there are shortcuts to healing emotionally, and that there are magic pills, or that there is even plants that can completely eliminate us from these ailments that we've carried for a long time. And that could not be farther from the truth, because the work that I did in the Peruvian jungle was just the beginning of my healing journey. It was a pivotal moment in time and space, for sure, where I was initiated with my family into this path, where I understood and made a connection with my ancestors, and I understood how I was running on patterns, but I didn't know how I was going to break them. And yes, there's a lot of science behind plant medicine now, especially Mother Ayahuasca, on how it does physical healing to the brain, the neuron velocity, and the things that are damaged in the brain through emotional pain. And of course, there's so many spiritual breakthroughs. So it was like I was given a key when I went to the Peruvian jungle to open all these doors of consciousness and truth. But in my day-to-day life, I still needed to integrate all that had occurred, because it was so much. I went through 4 ceremonies with Mother Ayahuasca and 2 different ceremonies with the plant medicine San Pedro, one in the Peruvian jungle, another in the top of the Andes Mountains. Beautiful settings, beautiful teachers, beautiful medicines. But again, those 17 days were just so much that I didn't even understand fully and grasp the concept of what had occurred to me. So when I came back to Western society, I thought that my life was going to be completely healed and fixed. I thought that I wasn't going to be addicted to alcohol anymore. And I thought that that was going to be the pivotal answer to everything that I was looking for, when everything was, in fact, far from that. When I came back to Western civilization, back to my life, everything in my life started to turn upside down. It felt like literally we all went through our own near-death experience, myself, my husband, and my 2 sons when we came back. This is where a lot of people need to be really, really conscious and understand these plant medicines and really understand how to integrate them, not just do the work of the plant medicine, but what are you going to do when you get back home to maintain and to integrate the wisdom that the plant had given you? Because even to today, 2015, 2023, it's almost going to be 10 years. That's freaky, 8 years. Every single day, I'm still integrating the lessons of what Mother Ayahuasca taught me. So because it was so much and everything had been opened up in my subconscious mind, because that's what happens. You partake in these plant medicines, and it's like all the barriers that were blocking your subconscious mind are broken, and you're left kind of vulnerable and naked with all of these traumas, emotional pains that not only you have experienced, but that I witnessed and saw that my ancestors had experienced that they couldn't heal from. So it can become very overwhelming when you get back into your life, because what do you do with this awareness? What do you do with these experiences? And how do you truly disrupt the pattern? Because after 4 ceremonies, it's just not going to be enough. And so when I came back, everything in my life started to turn upside down. Like I said, we had near-death experiences, all of us. And that's when I started to really, really connect deeper to my highest consciousness, to God, and I asked for help. And at that point, when I asked for help, it was almost when I finally surrendered and realized that I really needed help. I asked for help, and it was almost in synchronicity where I received guidance to basically go to a Kundalini yoga class. Somebody told me, why don't you try Kundalini yoga? Now, in the past, in 2008, I began my spiritual journey. So I had already been practicing different forms of yoga, different forms of meditation. I went on a quest to travel throughout the world, to Thailand, to Costa Rica, to all these different places to actually learn about the different spiritual traditions. I was a seeker that wanted answers. And so I had already been dabbling in different holistic practices, even to the point where at one point I studied Reiki and became a certified Reiki master in the search of holistically healing, because I never ever resonated with pharmaceuticals, with the Band-Aid. I never trusted that approach of healing because I saw what it did to so many people. And basically it was just the Band-Aid and you did not get to the root cause. And also because what I was shown in the Amazon jungle of these patterns, that I knew a pill was going to be just like a Band-Aid that wasn't going to actually address all these issues that I was going through. So I never resonated with Western medicine or with the traditional approach of just taking an antidepressant. So I would numb my emotions, right, to help myself. When I came back from the jungle, I thought that I wasn't going to be drinking anymore. I thought that I had gone and received all this awareness to stop the drinking, when the opposite was true. I was still drinking, still overwhelmed, still in a work, and I had been a real estate broker for 15 years. I was at the top of my game. Like, my job was easy, making over 6 figures a year. Everything was perfect, but yet it wasn't something that I was supposed to be doing with my life. In fact, since 2008, I was receiving signs and messages from God herself about where in my life and what I needed to do with my life. And I just wasn't listening. So when we don't listen to our soul, we go through these dark nights of the soul where the soul literally pulls us back. And sometimes we have to go through serious challenges. Many of us near-death experiences that then pull us back to where we actually need to be. You might call this an illness. You might call this a divorce. There's very different many things that happen for us to realign to our truth and to our essence. And that's what was happening. So when Kundalini Yoga came into my life, I went to my first class. And when I went to my first class, I walked into the room and I was the only student in this very small ashram, an older looking house in the middle of downtown Phoenix. And there was a teacher in front of me that had a long beard and was wearing a turban. And I had never experienced this type of yoga before. I had been a fanatic of like Bikram yoga, and I've tried other types of yoga, but I never was disciplined enough to actually have a daily practice. And there were some yoga practices that really helped me, but none of them helped me to heal an addiction to alcohol or to deal with the pain. Because truly, you never say, why the addiction? You always get deeper and you ask, why the pain? So when I went to my first class, I was freaked out because I was like the only one in the room. And here I am sitting in front of what looked like a guru to me, turban, white clothes. And I had my first Kundalini yoga class. The experience was absolutely out of this world. Not only did I feel like I was back in the Peruvian jungle, in the Maloca, working with Mother Ayahuasca, but many of the things that I had learned in the Peruvian jungle, I was able to integrate in that one class. I was able to understand what my path was. I was able to understand where the pain laid in my body, in my mind, and my spirit. And I was able to then understand how to deal with that pain. So from the very first class, I was absolutely hooked, absolutely addicted, right? And I would attend class after class after class until I realized that this was the path. And that after only a couple of weeks, I was able to heal my addiction fully from alcohol. And so from that journey, from those 2 weeks, I became really, really interested. And I started my journey of becoming a teacher. And that was almost 4 years ago. And after becoming a teacher, I started to get on the path of becoming a Kundalini yoga therapist, which is a longer program. It's actually a 3-year program that I'm now enrolled in, that I have been enrolled in for a year now. And that is very, very powerful. In fact, there's going to be a symposium next February 2024, where a lot of the doctors, because now we've had doctors, scientists that have researched the science of Kundalini yoga since the late 80s, since the late 90s, early 2000s. So now we actually have data, we have science. There are many psychotherapists and doctors now in universities like the University of San Diego, where one of my favorite books was written by a psychotherapist there that actually has all of the different meditations and kriyas, which are specific ways we put our body, mantras, things of that nature that help specific, real serious mental illnesses, such as being schizophrenic, bipolarism, anxiety, depression, addiction, all of these different things. There's a symposium that is being held in February that is going to share all of the science and data that has been found. In fact, my teachers and my mentors, they themselves have been Western doctors, like psychotherapists or traditional doctors that are now Kundalini yoga therapists. And they are the ones that I am taking my clinical studies with and things of that nature to finish my certification as a therapist, as a Kundalini yoga therapist. And so I started to really understand the spiritual aspect of a Kundalini yoga but also the metaphysical and the scientific aspect. And through that logical mind understanding, but more importantly, through what I was experiencing in my body, I started to heal. I started to get to the root cause of the addictions. I started to get to the root cause of why I was running away from my past. I started to get to the root cause of where I wasn't forgiving. And through that, I realized that this was the way to heal from so many things that I could not heal for a long time. And so as I continued my practice, not only did I heal the relationship with myself, but I healed the relationship that I had with my mother. I healed the relationship with my husband, my 25-year marriage that definitely was in rocky situations, especially during the times of like 2012 and 2013. We were going through some deep depression and deep anxiety with everything that was happening in our lives. And then through that, I was able to actually physically heal, mentally heal, and spiritually heal. And then receive the downloads and the awareness of my destiny, of what the ancestors were guiding me to do, which in essence was to then help and assist other women disrupt ancestral karmic patterns in their lineage as well. Because what I noticed is that the addiction patterns did not start with me. Through that process, I started to really understand the science of epigenetics. So I went deep into understanding how we pass down trauma, emotional pain in the DNA. I started to understand that the patterns that I was carrying of toxicity in relationships, romantic relationships, in the mother wound, of not accepting and understanding my mom and everything that she had gone through, all the depression she had gone through because of the lack of love that was given to her, and not doing the forgiveness work and the acceptance work to realize that that was not personal and it had nothing to do with me. And so as I started to combine my Kundalini yoga therapy and my A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy, which I was a student of since 2008, healing started to happen very, very quickly. And now I can understand what actually occurred. And this is what I want to share with you today, because this is the game-changing process that took me from patterns of emotional pain that my ancestors could not heal to sovereignty, going beyond the pattern and disrupting the pattern and healing myself and healing 7 generations before and 7 generations afterwards. So what we need to understand as it relates to ancestral karma, and many people actually ask me this question, which I do want to answer here today. Well, why is it that if you're saying that ancestral karma and epigenetics say that we inherit our ancestors' trauma, or if they couldn't heal from emotional pain, why is it then that not all of my sisters and I are the same? Or why is it that my brother doesn't have the addiction and I do? Or why did my sister go through the abuse, but I didn't? Why is my sister less anxious than me? Why do I have depression and not my little brother? And that's actually very easily understood. The first thing is I learned something that I learned actually through Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a trauma-informed doctor who actually has worked with plant medicines as well, Mother Ayahuasca. And not only that, he works with a Kundalini yoga therapist. So he has helped clients heal through plant medicine, but then there's a Kundalini yoga therapist that helps them integrate the healing. And what he said was very, very powerful. And he said that the reason why not all of our siblings and sisters are the same is because we actually are all being raised by different parents. That's right, by different parents. And you say, well, how does that happen? Well, in my situation, for example, I was the firstborn, right? And when I was born, my mom and dad were at a different level of consciousness, going through different struggles and challenges than when my second sister was born. When I was born in Mexico. They lived in Mexico and they were transitioning immigrants that were coming to the United States of America. I was left with my caregiver, first my aunt, who I absolutely love so much. She passed away when I was 8 years old. Grass Dancer says perception of the experience. Exactly. Perception is everything. And perception is correlated to projection. And projection is your inner world. We think that this world outside of us is being stimulated through our brain, through our physical senses. But that is not the truth. The truth is that your perceptions are created by your projections. and your projections are a reflection of your inner world. So you are creating this outer reality with your inner world. And if you don't change your projections, your perception of the outer world will always be that trauma or that identification of that trauma, whatever that looks like. So that's actually a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And so as I was going through this, awareness of what had occurred to me and all these different things that I was experiencing. What you need to understand is that as a child, for example, for me, I was left with my aunt my mom had me 40 days after she had me. My mom had to come to the United States of America, and I was left with my aunt for a few weeks. Then when I was 3 years old, my mom had to come to the United States of America, and she left me with my grandma for longer periods of time. In fact, at one point, she left me for about 3 months. When we don't have bonding and connection with our mothers, regardless if she left you on purpose, like she abandoned you and you were given up for adoption, or if she had to go out to work and left you with the caregiver, even if the caregiver did take good care of you, or perhaps there was just disconnection because perhaps your mom was actually going through deep depression herself, then she wasn't a present mom. She couldn't be because perhaps she was running on a pattern of emotional pain. I recently just spoke about one of the most common ancestral karmic patterns, which is the mother wound. You can go check out my Instagram's reels for that. And because of that, that creates basically abandonment issues. Your brain is developing from the ages of 0 to 5. And when we don't bond and have that connection with our mom, especially, we grow up to be adults that are very, very anxious, that are that we could suffer from depression and suffer from many other attachment disorder. And my sister, for example, she was the second one born, and we had already moved to the United States by the time she was born. Mom did not leave her with grandma or with aunt. She was always with her. But also my second sister went through different struggles because during that time, for example, my mom lost a sister that was very dear to her, like a mom to her, which began a deeper level of depression for my mom. So when my sister was born, my mom was going through a completely different experience than what she was going through when I was born. Same thing with my third sister. My mom was going through a different experience of her life than when I was born and when my sister was born. And then my brother, the last one born, my mom was a different completely person than who she was when we were born. And so this is why not all of us not only awaken, because through epigenetics, what we need to understand is that if our ancestors did not heal from something emotionally, a trauma, those genes are passed down to us, but they don't turn on in all of us. They only turn on in you if you are not managing stress. So if stress is not a bad thing, stress is bad when you don't know how to manage it. As children, if you lived under a lot of chaos, if there was a lot of abuse, emotional, physical abuse, or abandonment, then your body literally becomes addicted to the cortisol hormone, which is derived from stress, right? But if you're someone that is addicted now to this hormone, then as an adult, you'll create drama, you'll create situations in your life so that you can get that cortisol kick, right? Stress also happens in many other different ways, though. Like, let's say your business is growing. Let's say you're entering into a new relationship. Let's say you're moving. Let's say something's happening in your life, like you did lose someone you love dearly. It's how you manage that stress. Because if you don't manage that stress, if you start to numb your emotions with alcohol, with drugs, with toxic relationships, with sex, with all of these different ways where we don't want to honor and feel what we feel, then that gene is going to turn on. So you could have someone that was healthy all of their life, and then they could be 28 years old and they tragically lose their father or their mother. The stress is so much that they don't know how to manage it. And all of a sudden they can become addicts. They can become complete homeless or complete turn 360 around. Why? Because that gene was always in them. And that gene turned on because the person is now not managing their stress.
So that's why there's different factors, and why you, your brother and sister are not always going to experience the same traumas or genes turning on. And it always correlates back to, one, what was your mom going through when she was especially pregnant with you? Because when she was pregnant with you, she literally wired and pre-wired your nervous system. And two, what was she like as a mother during the ages of 0 to 5, especially when your brain was developing? That is what differentiates how you, your brother, your sisters are going to respond to these epigenetics that are engraved in our DNA. So when I started to realize that, and I started to understand what Kundalini Yoga actually did to my nervous system and to my brain, I understood why I was able to heal from an addiction to alcohol, how to get to the root cause of the pain. And this is why it's so important for us to understand why we cannot skip over these 3 very important aspects of the healing journey. Because I assure you that if you're going through physical abuse right now, or if you went through physical abuse as a child, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, if you right now are going through some kind of addiction, I can assure you and guarantee you that you are not the first one in your lineage to go through this. That in fact, this is a pattern that has been passed down, that because it hasn't been addressed and because it hasn't been dealt with and healed, will continue in your generations to come. So the more we say, I'm never going to be like my mom, or I'm never going to be like my dad, the more we affirm being like them if we don't actually heal and get to the root causes. So the 3 very important aspects that I understood that were a game-changing process and me being able to finally reclaim my sovereignty from these patterns were, number 1, of course, the nervous system. And this is where Kundalini Yoga is so powerful. Because remember, if your nervous system is pre-wired from your mom's patterns and your grandma's patterns, because remember, you were in your mom's womb when she was in the womb of her mom, then what we need to understand is that Kundalini Yoga reestablishes that stability and resilience in the nervous system. Remember, instead of being addicted to cortisol, you're training the nervous system through inhales and exhales, through chanting specific sound frequencies, because the sound frequencies that are running through your SIP system and subconscious mind are of the pattern of trauma. So by inserting a new sound frequency, chanting, because there's nothing more powerful for self-healing than your voice, it's called vocal toning, then what we're doing is we're promoting for the nervous system to become more balanced, right? We're actually creating glandular secretions that are healthy for the body. This is what I call opening up the medicine cabinet from within. See, if we're running on cortisol and adrenaline because we're unconscious 90 to 95% of the day, and if we don't have a practice of meditation every single day, then what happens is that our brain and our glandular secretions are very toxic. They're making us sick. In fact, if you go to the doctor, and many women that have joined my coaching program and community go to the doctor, and the doctor will tell them, you have very high levels of cortisol that are really affecting your physical health. Well, the reason that is because the glandular system is secreting the nasty chemicals that are actually making you sick. And remember, when we numb our emotions, that's why the glandular secretions become toxic in our body. So what we got to learn to do is process and manage emotions, right? And that all goes and stems back to the subconscious mind, the brain, which we're going to talk about right now, and of course, the nervous system. So we manage our glandular secretions in the body, and it's not just the ones that support the stress response, but also those that support relaxation, connection, right? If you have any attachment disorders, digestion, not only of food, but of emotions, sexual functions, well-being, and also balanced sleep cycles. All of these things are very important for your mental health and for your nervous system. In addition, at this level of rebalancing, what happens is that the life force, your prana, your breath is actually revitalized. The blood in your system is oxygenated, including your brain. The organs are refreshed and purified. The muscles and the tissues are able to heal and renew at a quicker rate, which is very, very important because the body keeps score. Body keeps score of trauma. And if we don't know, release, this is why pharmaceuticals are not going to help you. If you're not releasing trauma from the body, how is Xanax or antidepressants going to do that for you? you're just going to continue to numb it and continue to perpetuate the pattern. So the blood is oxygenated, the organs are refreshed, the muscles and tissues are being healed. Our mind is becoming more balanced, right? We're able to process emotions better, where our emotions are generally more stabilized. We feel more connected to ourselves and to something bigger than ourselves, because ultimately what the nervous system represents metaphysically is consciousness. It's your ability to be in the present, not running on a pattern, which we're doing most of the day, 90 to 95% of the day. So the nervous system, when I was practicing, my nervous system got so stable that, again, it's not like the practice makes you be like a goody good tissue, like, oh, you shouldn't be drinking. God will never make you feel guilty. That is not the voice of God. The voice of God is wholeness, acceptance. That is, if you ever feel guilty about a habit that you're doing, then that's the voice of the ego. What I started to realize with Kundalini Yoga, once my nervous system started to become more stable, was that I was gaining awareness. Kundalini Yoga is the mother of awareness. So I was gaining awareness of these patterns of thoughts and beliefs, right? The deep-rooted pain that was causing the addiction that were running through my subconscious mind. And as I was bringing them to awareness and feeling them through my meditation practice, I was able to release them from the body instead of keeping them in my body, which is what I was doing before, through the addiction of alcohol, through numbing it in so many other ways. So my mind was being upgraded, right? My nervous system was able to then accept my past, do the forgiveness work we're going to talk about right now, to not deny it and not run away from it, and to also honor it and realize that it served a very important purpose. And to, instead of running away from the past or always living in the future, which is what I used to do, to learn how to be with the now. And through that, to become aware of these things that no longer serve me. And so what happens is this next part, which is very, very important. Not only is the nervous system changed, but what I started to realize was my brain got healthier. We can do tests on a meditators, and a brain of a meditator looks like a brain of a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, right? Robust, one that hasn't gone through trauma. Robust, oxygenated, it looks nice and spongy, like red, it's beautiful. If you've been through emotional trauma, not even physical or sexual, like just emotional, then what happens is your brain literally physically deteriorates. Like, we can scan the brain of even a 12-year-old that has gone through emotional trauma, and their brain might look like a 90-year-old brain, like a prune with no energy running through the system, no oxygen. Why? Because we're running on a constant program of the trauma. We're identifying, because it's not what happened to you, it's your identification with what happened to you. So as I started to practice Kundalini Yoga, what I started to realize is that, well, first, my brain started to heal itself, right? The hippocampus, the frontal cortex, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, because there's specific meditations for this, they started to function better, which means my neuron velocity, this is called neuroplasticity. It is the ability for the brain to regrow itself. My neuroplasticity basically started to heal and restructure my brain. The glands in the brain started to function. So instead of giving myself the toxic chemicals in the body, I was able to release beautiful chemicals. Like, I don't know if you knew, but we don't need to practice a psychedelic to actually experience a psychedelic experience, because there are specific meditations. In fact, a lot of the meditations that we work on, they help awaken and heal the frontal cortex, but also your pituitary gland right here, that what is known as the third eye, which actually secretes DMT. As children, we're secreting this naturally. And when you're dying, you're actually secreting it too. And this DMT is a natural chemical inside of you that you can allow the secretions to happen through meditation. So what I realized is that the more that I practice, my brain became more agile. I was able to process emotions more. But also what started to happen is that these patterns literally started to fall off of the brain. So again, with Kundalini Yoga, it was not that you're asked to be a goody good tissue, that you have to be vegan, not eat meat, not drink, not smoke. What started to happen is that these patterns literally started to fall off of the brain structure. So on a normal Tuesday, after my daily practice of more than 40 days, all of a sudden I would have the awareness of like, well, maybe I don't need that alcohol anymore. Or maybe I don't need to be smoking anymore. Maybe I don't need that thought anymore. The reason that that happens is because your brain is more agile and your nervous system is more agile. So in essence, you're getting high on your own supply. You don't need these outer external things to make you feel whole and connected and at one with the divinity. And so the brain was a big part of me understanding. And thankfully, like I said, there's so much research now, and there is a symposium happening in February, which I'm definitely going to attend, about the science and what it does to the brain. In fact, there's a study out there that has been done by the Alzheimer's Association that Kundalini Yoga, there's a specific meditation known as the Curtain Kriya. It's actually on my YouTube channel. So you can check it out here to practice it for 40 days. This meditation received almost a Nobel Prize, the researcher who did the research behind it, because what they discovered was that practicing this meditation for 40 days, just 40 days for 11 minutes every single day, they practiced this meditation on patients that had Alzheimer's. Not only did it stop the Alzheimer's, but it reversed. So it gave them back their memories and their memory. And here's what's outstanding. What science and researchers discovered was that there's a specific enzyme, there's a DNA strand, I would call it, that is known as telomerase. Telomerase. I never say it right. My husband's always like, you're not saying it right. But there's this telomerase. And what this is imagine it as like the shoelace and the end of a shoelace. And the end of a shoelace, you know how it's covered with like plastic? Well, the telomerase represents your DNA, and the end of it becomes destroyed through stress, through trauma. And the shorter those strands get, the faster you die. So if you could be somebody that's 20, and if you lived under a lot of trauma, if you lived under a lot of stress and you haven't managed it, then you probably have very short telomerases, which means you're probably not going to live a very long time. Well, through this research, what was discovered was that by practicing this meditation for only 40 days straight, what they realized was that the telomerase, the length of these DNA strands, increased by almost 60%, which is unheard of. There's nothing, they have not discovered any other meditation, any other technique, any pharmaceutical, anything that has increased these DNA strands, these enzymes more than this meditation, which is absolutely outstanding, because that means that it can bring the healing home very, very quickly. So again, if you want to learn more about that meditation, then go ahead and check it out on my YouTube channel. Grass Dancer says Curtain Kriya. That is the perfect spelling. Kirtan Kriya. Perfect. And it is on my YouTube channel. You can practice it 11 days, 40 days straight. This is a meditation that I give to my parents, to everybody that I know is suffering, especially because the other thing that we don't realize is that, especially your parents, ladies, and I hope you're not doing this, but they're addicted to social media, to TikTok. That is causing a higher rate of suicide, mental health issues, because not only do people now have their traumas that they haven't healed, but now their brains are becoming even more deteriorated because of the consumption of information. TikTok is very, very toxic as it is. Social media can be very toxic because it can raise your cortisol levels as it is. But what we need to realize is that it's damaging the brain terribly. In fact, the Surgeon General recently put out a disclosure that stated that social media is actually not healthy for children, especially. And doctors have been saying this for some time now, like kids with phones, especially between the ages of 0 to 7, that's like giving them vodka, what it does to their brain. And then we wonder why they have high levels of anxiety or high levels of depression or all these different instabilities that they're going through right now. So it's very, very important for us to realize that many of us, it's not just the stuff that we have to heal from the past, but it's also preventive medicine that we actually need to do. And so, yeah, go check it out on my YouTube channel. You'll love it. 11 is a master healer. It sure is. And we use that 11 a lot in Kundalini Yoga. You'll notice that many of our meditations are recommended to practice 11 minutes. one of the things that's very important for us to understand is also that Kundalini yoga was created for the householder. So for kings and queens, people that run, it's Raj yoga. So literally you had to be a king or a queen to practice this practice, or you had to be a guru or study under a guru for a long time. Yogi Bhajan brought these practices in the 70s because he knew, he was a futurist, and he knew that we were going to come to this age of Aquarius where all the information would be available to everyone, and where all of us would have access to this and be able to practice it, but it is created for the householder. So it's not for someone who's going to have to meditate for like 3,000 hours a day, or 2.5 hours. Now I do have a 2.5 hour practice. Like I get up every morning between 3:37 and 3:45, and I have a daily virtual meditation sadhana community in my academy, where the women are welcome to join me every single morning, and they don't have to be there for 2.5 hours. One of the commitments that they have to make for the academy is that they have to practice for 11 minutes for 40 days. But many of them, because they experience such big breakthroughs in their lives, they join me for way longer than that. And they come in earlier and earlier. And you all know that really successful people get up really early, and their day is determined by what happens in those morning hours. And especially if you're getting up super early, the brain has a better ability to sustain and accept the medicine. The chemicals work more beautifully. And we all know that masters always woke up in what is known as the ambrosial hours, which are these moments before the sunrise, to actually really connect more deeply to that self, to God, to whatever God means to you. So yeah, 11 you'll see that a lot. And again, most of our practices, it's like, there's some meditations where 3 minutes is enough, but be very, very consistent, right? Doing the 40 days, because what we notice after 40 days, and now that we've had science behind this practice, the scanning of the brain, after 40 days is when we start to see that gray area start to dissolve itself, that those subconscious programs actually start to rewrite themselves. Now, there's different increments, like at 40 days, what happens to you versus 90 days versus 120 days, and even versus 1,000 days, which I can share with you more about that in a future podcast. But absolutely, consistency is key. It's more important that you master one meditation than you try to do like 50 meditations at the same time. So absolutely, yes, that waking hour, that ambrosial hours, when all the masters actually awoke and connected with themselves. And so the last aspect of that, which couldn't have happened without the brain and the nervous system healing, was that I was able to actually combine my work that I had already been doing for a long time in spiritual psychotherapy through A Course in Miracles. Since 2008, I was a student, and I've been teaching it now for almost 4 years. Actually, it's going to be a little bit longer now. It's going to be 5 years since I've been teaching a weekly class to my community. And the spiritual psychotherapy work is something that you cannot override or bypass. Through the spiritual psychotherapy work, what is very important to integrate is what I call the forgiveness work. Through A Course in Miracles, I was able to release not only a lot of guilt, but I was able to connect with the work of forgiveness and go beyond forgiveness to acceptance. Because ultimately, we waste a lot of time in trying to forgive people or trying to forgive ourselves. But what happens is that when you have a stable nervous system and you have an agile brain, you can stop identifying from the program of trauma, stop giving it your attention, stop giving it your energy, and start to even connect with wisdom and realize that even those tragic, very horrible things that may have happened to you served a purpose. And that even though they did occur to you, that you get the choice of identifying or choosing to continue to identify with them. You see, A Course in Miracles says that forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. And I think when we hear that right away, it can be very triggering, especially if you're someone that has gone through a lot of emotional trauma or pain. But we have to really understand, and I want to emphasize the words "you thought" and "to you" in that description of forgiveness, because it does not say what your brother did has not occurred, but rather what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. And there's a big difference with that. This is not denial that an event happened, but rather a different way of seeing yourself in relationship to the event. In essence, hurt people hurt other people. And if somebody hurt you, it was not a representation of your self-worth. It is not a representation of who you are intrinsically. And that's where the problem is, that we take things personal. And the reason why we continue on these ancestral karmic patterns is because of the lack of forgiveness. In fact, you not forgiving is going to continue the pattern. I heard Drew Barrymore, I'm sure all of you know who she is. Yesterday, I think it was an article that I read, that she said that she would never be able to evolve and have peace until her mom died. Like literally, she said that because of the traumatic experiences that she had gone through. And I'm not shocked, and I don't judge her, because of course, who knows what she's been through with her mom. But the reason why I'm appalled at her saying that is because the problem is that you think that once your abuser dies, or that person that hurt you is completely out of your life, that you'll find inner peace. And that could be farthest from the truth. Because even if the person is dead, which is where our ancestors come in, even if that person is no longer in your consciousness, if you do not do the forgiveness work, not only will that lesson repeat itself in your current lifetime, this is why you keep attracting, aligning with these negative toxic relationships. They just have a different hair color. Not only will it continue in this lifetime, you'll continue it in the next lifetime, because this is a perfect university where we're here to learn the lessons of unconditional love, but you'll also pass it down to your lineage, to your children. So it doesn't matter if you say, I'm never going to be like my mom. And it doesn't matter if you do everything possible to be a conscious parent and to do everything that your mom couldn't do for you. If you have not forgiven yourself and you have not forgiven your mom, if you have not accepted yourself or accepted your Judas, those people that hurt you, if you have not done that work, inevitably, as we know through epigenetics, as we know through samskaras, which is understanding how the DNA is passed down through us in yogic science, that pattern is going to be passed down. So because I was able to get to the root cause of why the pain and not why the addiction, I started to become so emotionally strong that I stopped taking things personal. I started to understand that that person was reacting or responding based on their level of consciousness. And in fact, when somebody comes to you and hurts you or betrays you, it's actually a cry for help. Not only is it a cry for help from an unconscious child that is looking to be liberated from you, but it is also a soul contract that you made with that individual before you even incarnated. And because you made that soul contract, when that person triggers you or hurts you, that person, what that person really is doing is actually sending you a very high form of love. Because if you can then see that attack or see what is happening through the eyes of God, meaning it has nothing to do with my worth and value, but has everything to do with the fact that this person is liberating me. By me being triggered, I can feel these emotions and let them rise out of me so that they don't stay in my body, which liberates me. And by me responding to this individual emotionally strong, not taking things personal, then the karmic pattern will end. But we cannot do this if we don't have a stable nervous system and if we don't have an agile brain from the trauma we've been through. That's why in my academy, in my community, there's a process that you follow to raise vitality, to raise chi in the system so that you can get to that point of acceptance. Because I can tell you that if somebody comes to me and they've never done any inner work at all, and they have been through very serious emotional trauma, if I'm just going to tell them, hey, you're going to need to do the forgiveness work, that can be incredibly detrimental and incredibly triggering. I understand that you need to acknowledge what happened. In fact, a big part of why we don't heal is because we don't acknowledge what happened. We tuck it under the rug. We pretend it didn't happen. We don't talk about it, or we don't express what it made us feel. So a big part of it, absolutely, let's acknowledge what occurred, but let's not keep it as our identity. Let's do the work we need to do to actually release ourselves from that story and to tell a brand new story for ourselves and for our lineage. And this is why the forgiveness work and that spiritual psychotherapy work that I had been doing for such a long time became so instrumental, and why it is a continued core teaching of the teachings that I teach in my process of helping other women also disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns. So in a nutshell, as you can see, the game-changing pivotal 3 aspects of how I was able to overcome these patterns of ancestral karma were: number 1, my nervous system became more stable. I healed it, and I was able to rewire it from the patterns that were programmed in me from my lineage. Number 2, my brain became more agile. I was able to heal it and rewire it from these subconscious programs, as well as allow it to give me the chemicals of that heal my body and not that continue to keep it under the cortisol levels. And then number 3, I absolutely integrated the work of forgiveness, which ultimately led me to the work of acceptance, so that I could stop running away from my past, so that I could honor my ancestors and everything that I had gone through, and so that I continued to fully see myself as whole and complete, and also shifting the perception of who I thought God was, a judgmental man that sits on a chair that makes us feel like we're wrong or right. And so through these 3 aspects, I realized that you cannot skip over any of these to actually heal and to align with your Dharma purpose. Now you can do it too. Like I mentioned, there are a few meditations already on my YouTube channel. One that I recommend tremendously is the one that I spoke about right now, especially for your brain and for your nervous system, which is the Kirtan Kriya. You can also do a Google search on Kirtan Kriya Alzheimer's research, or the science behind Kirtan Kriya, so you can see all of the different studies that are being created and that have been created on the power of this amazing Kriya. And hopefully you'll be able to also share this with your parents, with your mom, with your dad, so that they can themselves can actually integrate this practice. Now, one other thing that I'm doing that I'm really, really excited about, for a yogi like myself that meditates and is very honored to be part of this lineage of Kundalini Yoga, the summer solstice is a very important time in our lives, just the way the equinoxes are, and just the way eclipses are, or these portals of the full moon and the new moons. Our ancestors were very, very connected to these natural rhythmic cycles of Mother Earth, and they used these special days to practice meditation for rituals so that they could disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns, connect to their destiny, connect to the divinity. And this is why they were so advanced. We think that our ancestors, especially like 5,000 years ago, that they didn't have access to technologies, that they were savages, when in fact, especially if you like study things like from Greg Braden, he's a great scientist who has been around the world, who is telling a whole different story of actually how advanced they were. The technologies that they had access to, that they created, we haven't even seen anything yet compared to what they used, which we're going to have access to now here in the very near future. Well, the reason that they were able to do that was because they used these techniques of meditation and Kundalini Yoga. I mean, it's ancient. It's 5,000 years old. It came before religion. There's evidence that my ancestors, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and throughout the world, not just like in the East and India, where the practice was derived from, that this practice, Kundalini Yoga, was actually practiced throughout the world because it is a science of energy. And so they used these portals and they built these temples, like in Chichen Itza or in Egypt, all the pyramids, to meditate, especially on these very specific days, so that they could bring healing fully home, so that they could connect to the divine, so that they could download and be able to move beyond their patterns. And so the summer solstice is a very important day in our lives, and it's right around the corner on June 21st. And typically I host a private event for my community, but this year I'm actually hosting a 3-day summer solstice disrupt the pattern event, where I'll be sharing with you my specific method, awareness, vitality, and integration of this method to be able to disrupt the pattern, and so that you can align with your dharmic purpose. Now, I am going to be opening it up to all women. It is going to be complimentary, and you'll have an ability to join us and to sign up starting next week. If you're interested in getting on the wait list already, all you have to do is send me a DM at Veronica Berrigan I am. You can send me a DM here on Facebook, on YouTube as well, on my podcast, and I'll put you on my email list so that you can be notified as soon as we open registration. And this is going to be a 3-day event. Like I said, it's going to be in the evening, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, so that we can use the portal of the actual summer solstice so you can experience the incredible power of this technology and heal yourself and heal 7 generations before and after. Now, next Wednesday, I'm going to have way more details about the event, what you can expect, how to prepare, more about the summer solstice. Join me again at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here. In the meantime, if you're interested in joining us for this 3-day event, then make sure you send me a DM and I'll go ahead and add you to our wait list. Just want to thank each and every one of you. I'll make sure I didn't miss anyone's comments here for joining me today. Thank you for all of the likes. Thank you for all of the beautiful comments. Grass Dancer, honor to be hanging out with you here today. Thank you for your beautiful questions and comments. And of course, thank you for subscribing and sharing this message with others, with your communities. Thank you for hitting the like button. All of your support has been tremendous, and it continues to just drive me and continue to share this incredible practice with each and every one of you. I'll see you again next week on Wednesday, 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Have a blessed rest of your week. Satnam.